The note was a bolt from the blue. Joey, I'm leaving for a while. I'm not sure how long. It's not your fault. I just met someone. Please don't try to track me down or get in touch. I need this. Love, Shelley. It hit me like a ton of bricks. My wife of 21 years, gone in an instant. I'm Joe Mason. My wife, Michelle, Shelley, and I go way back to grade school, thanks to our parents' connection. We only started dating in junior year of college, though. Before that, we attended different schools. But in college, sparks flew. Senior year, we moved in together, and after graduation, we tied the knot in the summer. Shelley's a lively, blonde woman with blue eyes, while I'm more average-looking with brown hair and eyes. I run my own law practice, and she's a nurse supervisor at a local hospital. We're both in our 40s and keep fit with gym sessions, hiking, and volleyball. She's into aerobic dancing, while I prefer self-defense classes and hitting the heavy bag. It's good exercise and builds strength. Our 2 kids are away at college. James is 19, and Susan's 18 and just started her freshman year. When I got the note on that sunny April day, I immediately called them. James was stunned, and I promised to keep him updated. Susan, less surprised, mentioned seeing Mom having lunch with a coworker named William Connor. She felt uneasy about it but didn't think much of it until now. I reassured her it wasn't her fault. After those calls, I did some digging on Connor. He's a doctor who worked at Shelley's hospital until recently. He's 40, divorced, and a cardiologist who also served as an administrator. There was a blip in his career 3 years ago when a patient died during surgery. He's a tall, stocky guy with blonde hair. Despite my efforts, I couldn't find his current whereabouts or Shelley's. I checked our accounts and discovered Shelley had withdrawn over $200,000 from our savings, leaving almost nothing behind. I enlisted the help of a tech-savvy friend to track down Shelley or Connor. Bill promised to look into it and let me know if he found anything. Meanwhile, I contacted Vanguard about the withdrawal, which was still pending. Our house was jointly owned, valued at about $800,000. Perhaps she had some kind of settlement in mind, or maybe she was simply both a cheater and a thief. I drove to her parents' house, around 30 miles away. Despite it being a Wednesday, both cars were parked out front. Mark and Sally Benton had worked alongside my parents at GMG Enterprises for years. While we hadn't socialized much recently, I had no issues with either of them and believed they had raised their daughter well, until now, that is. I knew Shelley was close with her mom. When Mark opened the door, he didn't seem surprised to see me. He led me to the kitchen where Sally was seated, sipping water. "Hi, Sally. What's going on that I don't know about?" I asked. Mark interjected, Sally mainly, and we knew Shelley was on a troubling path. She confided in her mom, and we agreed to keep it from you until she had a chance to talk to you. Sally, she didn't give me any chance at all. And she emptied our savings. I'm considering pressing charges unless she returns half soon. Needless to say, I'm not pleased with her or her partner. "Joe, watch your language," Sally said gently. She believes he's her soulmate. "And what about you?" "Because I think he's not just stealing her heart, but also our money." "I met him once when she brought him here about a month ago," Sally recalled. She introduced him as a coworker, and we had a conversation. Later, I warned her, but she didn't listen. "I assume you know where she's gone." "Where is she?" "We're not supposed to tell you, Joe. She's afraid of how you'll react." "Sally, Mark, I'll find her soon anyway. And she's right to think I'm reacting poorly." Just then, my phone rang. It was Bill. He informed me that both Shelley and Connor had taken positions at a hospital in Pittsburgh and rented an apartment nearby. They had a joint account with some money in it, but the $200,000 hadn't appeared yet. Bill suspected it might have been moved offshore. He promised to keep me updated. Mark and Sally watched as I took down the hospital, bank, and apartment addresses in a notebook. Bill had also given me their cell numbers, which I memorized without writing down. I didn't want Mark and Sally to know I had them. "If she comes back and apologizes, would you take her?" Sally asked tearfully. I don't know if she'll ever come back, especially after everything she's done, I replied honestly. But if she does, maybe we can consider counseling. I don't want you two to split up, Sally said, her voice breaking. Mark comforted her, and I bid them farewell. I returned to my office, where Bill called again just as I was walking in. He informed me that Vanguard had frozen the transfer of the $200K, citing potential fraud concerns. They refused to release the funds at the moment due to irregularities in the transaction. I relayed this information to Bill, emphasizing Vanguard's reasons when I called them back. Taking swift action, I had an associate draft an emergency temporary restraining order, TRO, against Vanguard, Connor, and Shelley. It took about an hour to finalize, and then I had it electronically filed. This should stall the theft for a while, as a TRO is a preliminary measure with an application for a permanent order usually attached. I reached out to my parents in Oregon to update them on the situation. They were understandably surprised and sympathetic. With time to contemplate, I considered my options and what I truly wanted to do next. Pennsylvania, where Shelley and Connor were located, didn't consider adultery a crime, but in Virginia, where we lived, it was a misdemeanor. The thought lingered in my mind. Seeking guidance, I decided to call my mentor, Uncle Jed, who lived nearby in D.C. He had retired from law but was still a trusted source of wisdom for me. We arranged to meet for dinner at his place, so I stopped by a pizzeria to pick up some food and beer on the way. While waiting for dinner, I contacted a private investigator to look into the duration of Shelley's involvement with Connor. Perhaps it had been going on longer than I realized. Reflecting on recent events, I pondered if there were any signs I had missed. My focus had been consumed by a lengthy trial recently, which may have led me to overlook certain changes in our relationship. It was only about a month ago that our intimacy abruptly ceased. Before that, our sexual life had been consistent, even during busy periods like trials. I should have noticed the shift earlier. Before heading to Jed's house, I stopped by a clinic to undergo STD tests, just to be safe. Then I collected the pizza and beer and arrived at Jed's doorstep. He welcomed me warmly, the same familiar house from my childhood. It was just him there today, as his last partner had left about a year ago. Well, what brings a busy attorney like you to a place like this? Jed asked as I entered his home. I explained the situation, showed him the note, and updated him on my actions. I see. Quite unlike her, he remarked. Sit here for a while. Reflect on your life together, the good times, the memories. I'll get us something to drink. I followed his suggestion, reminiscing about the laughter, the children, the intimacy, and the social life we shared. Tears welled up as I delved into our shared history. She had been my rock for over 2 decades, the one person I loved and trusted the most. The realization that it was all gone hit me hard, and I found myself silently sobbing into my sleeve. Jed returned with whiskey and shot glasses. Silently, he poured us both a drink, allowing me to release some of the pain. The distraction of the alcohol helped ease the intensity of my emotions. You're wise, Jed. Thank you, I said between sips. Do you want her back? He inquired. I want my old life back, but that seems impossible now. I don't know if I want her back. She might do it again, if I even survive this time. You need time to process this, perhaps even professional help, Jed suggested. I'm here for you, but I don't have the best track record since Ellen. We delved into a 2-hour conversation, sharing memories of our marriages. Tears flowed as we reminisced, but while Ellen was never coming back, Shelley's return remained uncertain. By the end of our talk, I was overwhelmed with a profound anger toward Shelley, realizing that I might never be able to stand being with her again. Driven by rage, I stumbled outside and unleashed my fury on an old heavy bag hanging from a tree. Each punch and kick was directed at Shelley, the embodiment of my betrayal and pain. Jed watched from the porch, nearly calling 911 until the bag finally gave way, and I collapsed in exhaustion and tears. Jed helped me inside, calming me as best he could. Exhausted, I slept through the night on the couch, waking to the comforting smell of bacon and coffee in the morning. Despite my shaky state, I felt a hunger that couldn't be ignored. We sat down to a breakfast of bacon, eggs, and toast. Afterwards, I headed to the shower, shedding my clothes and donning a sweatsuit lent to me by Jed. As I washed up, I couldn't ignore the toll of the previous day's events. My hands were red and raw, my body sore all over, and a cut above my right eye served as a visible reminder of the turmoil. I tended to my wounds with antiseptic and a butterfly band-aid, feeling as though I had been in a violent altercation and emerged defeated. It had been about 24 hours since I first read the note. Jed recommended a marriage counselor he had used in the past, Mary Stevens. He assured me that counseling didn't necessarily require both parties and handed me her card. I left his place, got dressed for work, and headed in. The staff noticed my disheveled appearance, prompting questions. I called for a team meeting and explained the situation, informing them that I would likely be less available until I sorted things out. We rearranged schedules to accommodate. Back in my office, I managed to focus and get some work done, eating lunch at my desk and powering through the afternoon. At 5:30 p.m., I left for home, finding that Shelley had taken some belongings but left much behind. I bought boxes and tape from Lowe's and packed up her things systematically, stowing them in the garage. Shelley's absence meant there was room. I informed Bill that Shelley had her car. Then, I went through the house, removing all traces of Shelley, photos, frames, everything went into a trash bag. As I sat contemplating the situation, I opted for a microwave meal and retired for the night. But before sleep, I decided to investigate our home computer and Shelley's cell phone, which was still in its charging cradle. The computer revealed nothing significant in her emails, but her phone showed calls and texts to and from a number with a 540 area code, starting about 6 weeks prior. Some texts were between Shelley and Connor, aka Bill or Billy, setting up lunch dates and meetings before work, nothing conclusive, but certainly suspicious. The next day, I returned to work, finding solace in the routine. After lunch, the PI called with some intriguing information. He had stationed himself at a lunch spot frequented by Shelley's colleagues, where talk of the disappearance of the boss and the charming doctor was rife. Rumors circulated, with sightings of them together at a motel and kissing outside a nearby restaurant. It seemed the staff was convinced they were more than just colleagues. The PI managed to procure room rental paperwork from the motel, revealing 3 afternoon rentals in the weeks preceding Shelley's departure, all paid for in cash. Receipt copies and license plate numbers were obtained, with 2 plates belonging to Shelley and 1 to an unidentified vehicle. This prompted me to investigate Connor's financial situation. Why hadn't he contributed? I reached out to Bill again, and after about 2 hours, he uncovered severe financial troubles plaguing Connor for the past 10 months. He was behind on mortgage payments, car notes, credit cards, and child support. His hospital salary was being garnished due to his divorce. The thought crossed my mind that Connor's involvement might have been driven by financial motives, specifically the $200,000 Shelley had taken. I briefly sympathized with Shelley before my frustration boiled over, and I punched a nearby office chair, sending it tumbling across the room. My assistant checked in after hearing the commotion, and I apologized for the outburst. Following this, I scheduled an appointment with a marriage counselor and sought legal counsel from Mildred Hoover, a renowned divorce attorney. I briefed her on the situation, mentioning the upcoming TRO hearing and Shelley's service in Pittsburgh. Mildred assessed the potential outcomes of a divorce, noting that Shelley would likely receive half the value of the house and assets accumulated during the marriage. Later that evening, I opted for a microwave pizza and went for a long run. Around 9:30, I called Susan to check in. She mentioned speaking to Shelley, who seemed distressed about legal matters involving Connor. I explained the financial situation and expressed uncertainty about Shelley's safety, given the circumstances. Susan recounted hearing shouting in the background during their call, prompting concern, but Shelley dismissed it as nothing. We discussed her school and a new friend she made, then we ended the call. The weekend passed restlessly for me. Monday loomed large with the TRO hearing in the morning and my counseling appointment in the afternoon. I checked in with James, who hadn't heard from his mother either. A trip to the gym brought an unexpected encounter with Shelley's friend Clara Barton, also a nurse. She seemed hesitant to engage, but I intercepted her before she could leave. "I don't want to talk, Joe." "It wouldn't help," Clara said, trying to avoid the conversation. You knew things were going south, Clara. Why didn't you clue me in? I pressed. She said you might react badly, even violently. I'm more her friend. I wasn't sure if she was telling the truth, Clara admitted. What about this guy, Connor? Is he trouble? I inquired, sensing her reluctance. Yes, he's trouble. I warned her, but she was getting what she wanted from him. She thought she was in love, Clara explained. I heard similar from her mom. I just wish she had talked to me instead of sneaking off, I sighed. I think she'll realize soon enough. He's not the one for her. It might blow over if you give it time, Clara suggested optimistically. Not a chance. She made her choice. She can't expect to come back to me, I asserted firmly. Clara shrugged and returned to the treadmill. As I watched her, I couldn't help but notice her figure in spandex. Our exchange had lifted my spirits, and thoughts of her stirred something within me. With loose gym shorts on, I found myself getting excited. I focused on my workout, lifting heavy weights, and Clara approached, her gaze lingering on me. I seem to have caught your attention, she remarked, her eyes flickering to my crotch. I made no attempt to conceal my arousal as I replied, I guess you have. And I'm not complaining. I feel a bit guilty, but if you're up for it, you can shower at my place across the street, she proposed, a mischievous smile playing on her lips. Deal. I'll meet you out front, I agreed eagerly, already anticipating what awaited me after our workout. Clara appeared to be in her late 30s, with a medium height and a tight, curvy physique. Her brown hair and hazel eyes gave her a conventional yet pretty appearance. Having been divorced for some time, she seemed like prime rebound material for me. Without hesitation, I got up from the bench and followed her out the door, noticing two other people who looked at us with smiles as we left. Clara led me across the street to her apartment building, where we climbed a set of stairs to the second floor. The anticipation was palpable as she playfully swayed and giggled on our way up. Upon entering her apartment, she wasted no time in initiating intimacy, grabbing me from behind and pulling me into a passionate kiss. Breathless, she confessed, I always wanted you, but you were the boss's husband. Now, I'm going to have you. I'm all yours. I chuckled, eagerly shedding my clothes in response to her boldness. Clara undid her sports bra, revealing her enticing curves. With her shorts off, she exuded confidence and sensuality. Pushing me towards the bedroom, she positioned herself on top of me. In a moment of intense arousal, I reciprocated by pleasuring her, eliciting a powerful response as she climaxed. Flipping her over, she urged me to make love to her passionately. I entered her slowly, savoring the tightness of her embrace before building up to a crescendo of passion. Our synchronized movements were primal, fueled by mutual desire and strength. As we reached climax together, the intensity of our connection was undeniable. After a brief moment of recovery, Clara inquired eagerly, "How soon can you go again?" Unsure but eager to please, I responded, "Maybe about 60 seconds after you have me in your mouth." As I regained my arousal, Clara took control, straddling me as she rode with abandon. Our lovemaking intensified, each thrust bringing us closer to the brink of ecstasy. With simultaneous orgasms, we collapsed into each other's arms, spent but thoroughly satisfied. Waking from a brief nap, Clara encouraged me to retrieve my belongings and join her for a shower. As I left her apartment, I couldn't help but smile at the woman who had witnessed our passionate encounter earlier. "Did you enjoy yourself?" "Yes, I did. Thanks for asking." Back at Clara's place, she had already showered by the time I finished. I took my turn and slipped into another pair of gym shorts from my bag. Clara was draped in a terry robe, a sight that promised more intimate moments later. "We need some food and beer," she remarked, retrieving 2 bottles of pale ale from the fridge and a pizza from the freezer. As she set the oven timer, we cracked open the beers. "So, about what you said earlier. Are you really not considering taking her back?" Clara inquired. "At the moment, it feels that way. Perhaps a bit premature, but today with you certainly reinforced the idea," I replied. "You mean, if she's done it, you can too?" Clara probed. More like being with you could be a compelling reason to move forward. Besides, why does everyone assume she'll want to come back? Leaving must have been a well-considered decision, I mused. I'll tell you what. Whatever happens there, you can always count on me to blow your mind in the meantime, Clara teased. With the pizza ready, we devoured it in record time before washing it down with another round of beer. Then, she sat in an armchair, and I eagerly went down on her, eliciting multiple orgasms. She returned the favor, expertly pleasuring me until I climaxed in her mouth. The night unfolded into a passionate whirlwind, leaving us both thoroughly satisfied. In the morning, waking up next to her felt surreal yet intoxicating. We shared an intimate shower, followed by a steamy session against the shower wall. Afterwards, we enjoyed a naked breakfast, relishing in each other's company. As we lounged on her couch, our touches grew more deliberate, confirming the reality of our connection. Clara expressed her astonishment at the unexpected turn of events, while I remained unsure of how to proceed. I never imagined anything like this happening. It's incredible, but also overwhelming, Clara admitted, her gaze shifting to my lap. You're hard again. If I pleasure you, can we talk? Yes, I agreed, eager for both her touch and the opportunity to unravel our newfound intimacy. 20 minutes later, she returned from the bathroom, toothbrush in hand. Maybe we should get dressed. We could catch a chill or something, she suggested. All right, just for a bit, I agreed, slipping into gym shorts and a t-shirt while Clara opted for a pullover dress. Despite the casual attire, the air between us was charged with anticipation. I'm at a loss for words. What's happening here? Clara's tone was earnest, grappling with the surreal turn of events from the past day. We might just be the most sexually compatible duo on the planet, I offered, a conclusion drawn during my morning reflection. Clara pondered for a moment before voicing her concerns. How long can this last? And if it does, can we handle it? We won't know until we try, I replied, noticing the renewed spark in her eyes. Sensing her arousal, Clara wasted no time in straddling me on the couch, and our connection intensified. Despite the limited space, we embraced the spontaneity of the moment, even when we tumbled onto the floor. After reaching a mutual climax, we decided to freshen up and head to my place. As we laughed off the awkwardness of the situation, our frenzy gradually subsided. We drove to my house, where Clara explored the unfamiliar surroundings while I attended to some business. After changing into fresh attire, we bonded over a baseball game, discovering a shared passion for the sport. As the game progressed, our affection grew, culminating in a tender moment upstairs. The intimacy we shared surpassed anything I'd experienced before. Afterwards, Clara's confession left us both emotional, tears mingling with laughter. I wonder how the game's going, I remarked, a bittersweet reminder of life beyond our bubble. We returned downstairs to catch the final innings, Clara's insights adding a new layer of enjoyment to the game. In that moment, amidst the cheers and camaraderie, I found solace in our shared connection. I prepared a meal for us, a chicken stir-fry, accompanied by wine. Throughout the meal, we exchanged tender gestures, reinforcing our bond. As we locked eyes, I realized that I never wanted to be without her. I love you. I'll do whatever it takes to keep you, Joe, she declared. There's no need to fight. I'm yours, I assured her. Returning upstairs, our initial tenderness quickly gave way to passionate lovemaking. Our connection intensified, leading to multiple rounds of passionate sex, even continuing into the morning. Over breakfast, I mentioned my upcoming court appearance and therapy session. Maybe I won't need as much therapy now, but I'll still go. And if you're here when I return, I'll cook for us again. I'll be here, probably naked, she joked, before we shared a kiss and I drove her home. In court, I stood alongside a lawyer from my firm as Connor and Shelley entered with their legal representation. Vanguard's lawyer outlined their concerns regarding the halted transfer of funds. The money had been withheld due to irregularities in the transfer request, including the use of an unfamiliar computer and an unauthorized destination account owned by William Connor. My lawyer argued that the funds were jointly owned and had been withdrawn without my consent after Shelley abruptly left me for Connor. The lawyer countered, asserting Shelley's right to withdraw from the account and insisting the money should be transferred as intended. The judge pressed Vanguard's representative for further details, including the origin of the attempted transfer and the ownership of the computer used. Unable to provide concrete answers, the focus shifted to Shelley, who appeared visibly distressed. After being sworn in, she struggled to raise her hand and affirm her commitment to truthfulness. "Mrs. Mason, are you married to Joseph Mason?" "Yes." "Were you the joint owner of a Vanguard account with him?" "Yes." "Last week, did you attempt to withdraw $200,000 from that account?" I know. She glanced around anxiously. Connor released her arm, distancing himself. "Did you, in any way, give someone permission to make such a withdrawal?" "Not that much." "Please explain." "Bill, Mr. Connor, asked to borrow $20,000 to pay some overdue debts. I hesitated but agreed. He requested my password. Since our move, my computer wasn't working, so I gave it to him. He used his computer, and I was using it for email. He sat at it briefly, then shut it down. I had no idea about the $200,000. When did you realize it was that much?" "When I was served." The judge turned to Connor. He scribbled a note on his pad. "Mr. Connor, can you state your name and address?" "I'm not here to be involved in this. I came to support Michelle." "Just comply with the order, sir." Reluctantly, he did, providing information I already had. The judge asked my lawyer, "Is Mr. Mason contemplating filing for divorce?" "Yes." "The complaint is prepared and will be submitted this week." The judge directed Vanguard to freeze the account until the family law court could assess assets. He instructed my lawyer to file by the end of the next business day, warning that failure to do so might prompt a reconsideration of the freeze. As the courtroom cleared, Shelley slumped into a seat behind the table. Connor stormed out, leaving her alone, head in hands. Once the room emptied, only Shelley and I remained. The bailiff urged us to leave so he could lock up. Guiding her into the hallway, I noticed Connor was gone, and only a few passers-by remained. Turning to Shelley, I asked, "Did you arrive here with that jerk?" She met my gaze. "Yes." "Looks like you might need to take a bus back to your new life." "Joey, I'm sorry for this mess. I thought he was my soulmate. That's what you told your parents." I realize now I was wrong. I was such a fool. I can't express how much you hurt and disappointed me, ending our long marriage with that brief note. "Joey, our marriage isn't over. I see now how foolish I was. I want to come back. Be your wife." Tears streamed down her face. "Sorry, Shelley. That ship has sailed. You cheated with that jerk for months behind my back, sneaking off without even talking to me. You played house with him. Well, you have to take the consequences. Can we talk somewhere private? What about the kids? They're not thrilled with you. You know that. Do you have any real explanation for why you discarded me like an old tissue?" "No. If you had asked me earlier, I would have said he was my soulmate. I did say that. I thought it would be easier for you if it was a clean break. But I can't explain right now why I was so foolish." Tears welled up in her eyes. It pained me to see her like that, but I refrained from reaching out. As far as being my wife went, I was done with her. There are only so many burdens one can carry in life. Besides, there was Clara. She felt like my soulmate, or at least the pinnacle of sexual compatibility. And I liked her beyond that, I think. I inquired about Shelley's plans. "I have a job in Pittsburgh. I'm on shift tomorrow. I have rent to cover there. I signed a year-long lease. I'll kick Bill out and see how things go. Maybe eventually you'll miss me. Then let me know, okay?" "Sure. I might miss you, I suppose. But I'd like to understand what went wrong. I'm still shocked and bewildered. I thought things were going fine. Little did I know. When I figure it out, I'll fill you in." She gave me a brief hug and walked away. I was left feeling a mix of deep sadness, openly shedding tears as she left, and a tight knot of anger twisting in my gut. Deciding a therapy session was imperative, I attended my afternoon appointment after grabbing lunch at Subway, a tuna melt. Mary Stevens, the marriage counselor, made it clear she wasn't a psychotherapist, primarily dealing with troubled marriages and their aftermath, if needed. At first glance, she appeared to be a gray-haired grandmother, but her movements were gracefully athletic as she crossed the office to shake my hand, and her smile was warm and genuine. I warmed to her immediately. "What brings you in, Mr. Mason?" "Please, call me Joe." My wife left me suddenly. She left a short note and moved to Pittsburgh with her new partner. They'd been seeing each other for about a month. "I see. And how have you been coping?" I recounted my initial reaction, the heavy bag sessions with Jed, and the subsequent mix of heartbreak and rage. Now, I felt both simultaneously. "It seems you've gone through the typical stages of grief quite swiftly. Depression, sorrow, anger. Usually, these emotions alternate for a while. How are you feeling now?" "Well, I'm ashamed. I was at the gym, venting my anger through heavy lifting. There was a nurse there, Clara Barton, who I knew through Shelley. I cornered her and asked about Shelley's interactions with the doctor. She was hesitant but eventually shared. Then, I noticed her in her workout gear, and we ended up at her place across the street, entangled. And we haven't stopped since. It's been days now. I barely made it to the court hearing today." Initially taken aback, Mary Stevens began to smile. I'd already mentioned how much I appreciated her smile. "So, you've developed, at least, a strong sexual attraction to Clara Barton, the nurse." Now, she was almost chuckling, a sparkle in her eye. She inquired, how did she come by that name? And how did she end up becoming a nurse? I'm embarrassed to admit that I didn't inquire. When we have a chance to talk, I'll find out. We haven't had many conversations so far. I'm tempted to ask for more details, but no, that wouldn't be appropriate. She tilted her head in a certain manner. We were seated across from each other at a table. She crossed her legs and smiled. I felt a reaction starting. This woman was making advances toward me, and she looked completely different from the grandmotherly figure I initially saw. I sensed something fishy. "I believe you're demonstrating something for me. Some way to illustrate what I experienced. I don't know how else to put it. Am I right?" Her expression changed. She appeared surprised and, dare I say, impressed. That's an astute observation, especially coming from a man. You caught on quickly. I must be losing my touch. "Oh, no. You got your point across, believe me." I crossed my legs and turned away slightly. "The point I was trying to make, and I think I succeeded, is that you might be particularly susceptible to sexual advances at this time. Vulnerable to women who see an opportunity. I'm not implying that Clara's feelings for you aren't genuine. Nor am I suggesting that your response isn't genuine, albeit somewhat one-dimensional. But I think it's important for you to get to know her better, as soon as you have the chance to talk. I'm sure we'll find the time, Mary." She chuckled. "You have a quick wit, Joe. I see your point. Clara mentioned that she always found me attractive, but off limits. But, Joe, I don't want to diminish this relationship. Not that I could. However, I want to point out that what you've described goes beyond typical rebound sex. It could very well be genuine and enduring. There have been cases of exceptional sexual compatibility. They're rare, but perhaps more common than reported. I raise this because I want to separate, at least for now, your new relationship with Clara from your marriage." "Why? Isn't my new relationship my choice?" "Yes, it is. However, I want to delve into your marriage as it was. It could inform your future actions." "I understand. Well, we had what I thought was a strong, stable marriage. I loved her, and I believed she loved me. We raised our children, and we didn't argue much. Sometimes, due to my work as a trial lawyer, I'd be extremely busy. But I always made time for our relationship, especially sexually. And before she left? I had just finished a lengthy trial. For about a month, there was no intimacy, neither physical nor emotional. She was seeking it elsewhere, and I didn't notice. My oversight. So, Shelley's youngest child, her only daughter, left for college. You were really busy, and she was likely feeling old. Maybe that's what happened. Maybe. Probably. But she needed to talk to me about it. She didn't. She just decided to marry someone else. Some total jerk, too. A thief, an asshole. What would you have done if she told you she was feeling lost? Or she was being tempted? Or, worse, if she had given in to temptation? For the first two, I would have tried to help. Maybe come to you. If she'd already crossed that line, too late, I think. So, if you stray, you can't stay. Mostly. That's really important to me. I kept my promise. Well, until she left me. It's a pretty clear boundary, though, right? What if it was just a one-night drunken mistake? Same, or maybe not. What was she doing out getting drunk anyway? But why all these hypotheticals? In real life, she did what she did. And it was completely unacceptable. Okay. Can we continue this next week? Sure. You're a very interesting woman. Completely unexpected. I'd be happy to see you again. That is, if you're not too exhausted. She smiled. We scheduled another meeting. Since it was 4, I decided to head home. When I arrived, Clara was sitting on the porch, reading. We didn't say much, just hi. Then we spent 90 minutes in bed upstairs. Afterward, we prepared a meal, roasted potatoes, spring onions, ground lamb, seasoned with spices. It tasted fantastic. I told Clara about the hearing. We weren't completely naked as we cooked and ate. Almost, but not quite. I'd like to have a talk, if we can. I tried to ignore Clara's naked breasts. She had put on shorts but no top for cooking and dinner. Okay. Just a sec. Clara grabbed a t-shirt and put it on. Thanks. Maybe we can find some time now that we're full and dressed. I assume this is a serious topic. What is it? I went to a therapist today after the hearing. I told her about what we've been experiencing and how it's escalated. She called it sexual hypercompatibility. I believe that just means we're sexually obsessed with each other. She said it might be a rebound thing for me, but she actually didn't think that. She said rebound sex wasn't like what I described. I admit I've been curious about how we can keep going like this. I'm sore, for sure. But if you dropped your shorts, I'd be on my knees in a flash. It's weird. I have decisions to make about Shelley, divorce, all that. She went back to Pittsburgh, but not back to the asshole. She said she had a lease and a job. That was after I told her we were finished. Sounds like she might be looking for something in Pittsburgh. I can't say. What I can say is that if what we have here is real, I won't give it up. But it hasn't been long since I was so-called happily married. I'm disoriented. Before I make any permanent decisions, I want to get to know you, in the non-biblical sense. Sounds like a plan. What would you like to know? Everything. Clara described her upbringing in the suburbs, college, and a live-in relationship there. That broke up after graduation. She had her nursing degree and got a job here, met a doctor, married him. He was a gynecologist. He was really great at digitally produced orgasms. Orally, too. It was his major talent. I was satisfied with our life, but he cheated. He got involved with a woman from our neighborhood. He wasn't very careful. I found out and confronted him. He apologized, asked for forgiveness. I decided to stay with the marriage. It was a mistake. About a year later, he was at it again. I got a good chunk of change in the divorce. He moved his practice to New York. I haven't seen him since. It's been 5 years. I've had some short-term hookups. And I had a friend with benefits last year until he moved to Thailand. You're not thinking of going abroad? No. So when we met at the gym, how long had it been for you? Almost a month. And that wasn't great. I have a vibrator, though. Well, now you have me. I scooted over and gave her a small kiss. I didn't mean to interrupt the conversation. But the conversation got interrupted. Later, in bed, we continued our talk. She asked about me, and I gave her a fairly comprehensive account of my life so far. She knew a good deal about the last few years. So I focused on early stuff. And we actually fell asleep. I guess there's only so much a body can take. The next few days saw a resumption of our sexcapade, but at a somewhat reduced level. I went back to see Mary Stevens. She asked about the new relationship. I told her that the sex was great, but not as constant. I also told her that Clara liked baseball and knew a lot about it. I described our discussions about our prior life. I told her that I thought it would take a long time to really know Clara. But I also told her that I wanted to try that. Then we discussed my marriage in further detail. Mary said that it would also take time for me to sort out my emotional reaction to what had happened. Then she asked me about my feelings toward Dr. Connor. I realized that I hadn't focused on him that much. When I did, I got angry. My feelings can be summed up in 3 words: drawn and quartered. She smiled. I always liked that phrase, but such barbarism. But how I feel now. As a concept, drawing and quartering has definite appeal. I assume they did it with a live person, to start. Oh, yes. Now I'm wondering how you know so much about it. We're not talking about me. I am a normal person with emotions, which aren't relevant here. She was still smiling. You know, if it wasn't for Clara, I'd ask you out. I know you did that thing on purpose, as a demonstration, but it was extremely effective. Just so you know. Actually, I believe that you did know. Yes. I have always had a talent. If I wasn't seeing you as a patient, I might use it on you. But now that's verboten. We ended our session. But I made an appointment for 2 weeks off. I had Shelley served with the divorce papers. She had a lawyer, and the divorce went smoothly since there were no minor children. It took about 8 months. Shelley was still in Pittsburgh. I spoke to her occasionally on the phone. She told me she was dating. And I told her about Clara. Shelley was subdued when I mentioned that. That girl always wanted you. I could see it. I'm such an idiot. She was steaming. As for Clara, she moved into the house with me. I had bought Shelley out. Our sexual compatibility settled into a true pattern. I told her that I loved her and that I'd like our relationship to continue. I didn't want a marriage having been burned. Clara had no children, and she wanted them at least one. We discussed it. She was 37. I was kind of frozen about the whole thing. One day she told me that she'd stopped the pill. She knew I was conflicted. But after she stopped the pill, she simply made love to me until I couldn't resist. And I was as happy as ever before when she announced that she was pregnant. I knew that she'd get pregnant. It made the intimacy even more exciting for me, and for her. I would never have believed that possible. Our daughter Linda was born a few days after Clara and I tied the knot in the chambers of a judge I knew well. Her parents, my kids. That was all. Shelley did remarry a pediatrician from Pittsburgh that she met at a convention in Dallas. Go figure. I hope she's happy. She made a stupid mistake, and I still blamed her for it. But it all worked out so well for me. How can I carry a grudge? Well, maybe a little. As for Connor, I did nothing about him. He did it all to himself. Last I checked, he was bankrupt, his license to practice was revoked, and he was working at a gas station in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. Clara and I have 2 children, Linda and Stephen. After her dad, who's a great guy. The compatibility never ended so far, and I now believe it never will. Well, don't come round, holding out your hand. Gonna get me a woman, like you got your man. Now she's gone, but I don't worry. I'm sitting on top of the world.